Greetings and welcome to our daily Devo for Wednesday, the 10th of May today. I will apologize right off the top for the quality of this video. I'm not sure why the timing of my movement and how the video is going is. It's, I know, distracting. It is for me anyway. Well, as you might imagine, we are spending yet another day in Bethlehem. Only today it's Manger Square that's being mentioned. It was Church of the Nativity yesterday. Today, Manger Square. They direct us to Ruth chapter 1, the book of Ruth, which is only 4 chapters, and they actually are recommending chapters 1 through 4. But the quote is from chapter 4 of Ruth, verse 11. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Those words spoken to Ruth. Manger Square in Bethlehem is a meaningful place to think about the Christmas story. But as we rub shoulders with pilgrims from all over the world, this square is also a place to think about immigrants and foreigners. Depending on which Old Testament texts we read, we're left with differing impressions of non-Israelites. On the one hand, foreigners and immigrants are extended legal protection within Israel, Exodus 22:21, Leviticus 19:33 and 34. On the other hand, the prophets rain down chapter-long judgment speeches on people from places like Moab, Isaiah 15:1 through to 16:14, Jeremiah 48:1 through 47. That tension is broken in the story of Ruth the Moabite who made her home in Bethlehem. A cascade of tragedy sets the stage for the book of Ruth. Naomi and her husband Elimelech had enjoyed the good life offered in Bethlehem, a place known for its agricultural bounty. But instead of celebrating the grain harvest, the opening verses of the book of Ruth highlight the awful famine gripping the land of Israel. Naomi and her family abandoned their homestead in Bethlehem and trudge east across the Jordan River Valley and onto the high plateau of Moab, where they find food and also brides for their 2 sons. Life is passably better for a time. Then tragedy strikes again when Naomi's husband and 2 sons all die. Grief-stricken and discouraged by multiple losses, Naomi decides to return to Bethlehem, and her daughter-in-law Ruth goes with her. Grain again grows in the fields around Bethlehem, but access is another issue, because during Naomi's absence, others laid claim to her family's farmland. So despite the risk involved, Ruth 2:9 and 2:22, Ruth the Moabite goes out to glean in the Bethlehem fields, hoping to find a meager amount of grain to support her and Naomi. That's in chapter 2, verse 2. Ruth's gleaning sets the stage for the Lord to clarify his perspective on non-Israelites who have immigrated into the promised land. The vulnerable Ruth is never accosted because the Lord keeps her safe under the watchful eye of Boaz. The kindness of this Bethlehem local is contagious, and soon other people in town begin to treat Ruth like one of their own. They even go so far as to speak a blessing over her that likens her to their own forebears, Rachel and Leah. And soon after Ruth and Boaz marry, this immigrant woman becomes intimately bound to the story of salvation. Ruth the Moabite is the great-grandmother of King David and a forebearer of Jesus. It's easy to become suspicious of those who are unlike us, particularly those who come from other places. But in the actions and attitude of Boaz, we are given an example of how the Lord wants us to treat them. May we follow his lead in offering protection, provision, and respect to the immigrant and to the foreigner. 2 questions. How are the lives of immigrants today similar to and different from the life of Ruth? Question 2. In what ways is the Lord calling you to follow in the footsteps of Boaz and care for the immigrant and foreigner among us? Our church has been blessed over the past several years now, maybe more than several, to have sponsored refugees, a large family from Sudan, and then more recently, a family who were refugees from Afghanistan. The mother and son fled to India first. We brought them here, and then eventually we got her husband, who was still in Afghanistan, out of there to here as well. We need to understand that in our day of so many refugees, forced from their towns, forced from their countries, forced to flee, looking for some place where they can have a life, many of them are believers. Many of them are blessings to the places they go, as we've been blessed by having the refugees in our fellowship. The scriptures are full of God's care for the less fortunate, for the outcast. We need to do that as well. Lord, we confess that differences between ourselves and others have generated fear and mistreatment. Help me to see foreigners as you see them. Help me to treat immigrants as Boaz treated Ruth. Blessings to you today. Keep an eye out for those who need to be shown love and mercy.